We're sitting in a 2015 Volkswagen Jetta. The complaint is the AC sometimes doesn't work at all, and when it does, it takes forever to cool down. So let's dig in. Just to show you right now, it's blowing about 71 degrees. That's outside air temperature. The AC is off. Let's turn it on. You can hear the change, but you don't feel any change. Now, Volkswagen knows that they have common issues with these AC compressors. So they sent out a service bulletin helping us diagnose the compressor and how to replace it. So let's walk through the process. So first thing we're going to do is pull codes, see what codes there are in the HVAC system. While this is doing its thing, we're going to go under the hood and check AC pressure. You can see our pressure is in range. Rule of thumb with R134 is the pressure roughly equals the ambient air temperature. So it's close to 65 degrees this morning, so we're right on point with our pressure. Now this is pressure. This doesn't determine the volume inside the system, but we have pressure. So we can rule out any kind of hard leak in the system. Let's pull out some data on the scan tool. Read data stream by list. We want the compressor current actual, the specified, speed, and load. Hit OK. For some reason it's not reading the actual, but I have what it wants to see, the compressor speed and the load. If I turn the AC on, so the current that it wants to see is 0.82 amps. What does it actually see? We don't know, so that's kind of lame that it's not pulling up. It's blowing hot still or warm, it's not cold. The compressor load did go up, the compressor speed did go up. So let me turn it off, and you'll see all those change. So it's activating the compressor. That lets me know that this control unit is at least sending a signal to the computer, letting it know, hey, let's start turning some stuff on. What is it actually seeing? That's a shame that I don't know that. Let's go out to the gauges and see if we see any pressure changes. With the AC currently on, there's no compressor change. After running it for a little while, now it decides to turn on. So we're at 30, so this drops, this raises. So now it's working like it's supposed to. And that's what the service bulletin says, that this is an intermittent issue. So next we want to look at the face of the AC compressor. There's these little silver metal bands. We just want to make sure that they're still in their slot on the face of the compressor. If they're out of their slot, then the compressor needs to be replaced. If they're in their slot, then they're good to go. So now we go under the vehicle to get access to our pressure regulator on the compressor. To get the skid plate off, it's just T25s. Comes off pretty easy, gives us excellent access. We want to pull this off, put jumpers between it, and hook up our scope. We want to make sure that we're getting that pulse width modulation from the computer. All right, you can see I have my leads hooked up. Black is pin 2, red is pin 1. They're having us set up our scope at 5 volts per division and 2 milliseconds per division. So that's our time base, that's our voltage. Turn the car on, turn the AC on, and we should have a pulse width from 75 to 100%. All right, there's our signal, 75%. That looks really good. Just a caution, be careful if moving around any wires if you have to, because that fan is on and you can get yourself hurt. But we're looking good. We want to make sure that this is good while the AC is not working. So if this is an intermittent issue, you want to check this while the fault is happening. In order to continue further in the diagnosis, first we have to evacuate the system. If you don't have the equipment to evacuate, that's okay. You can go to your local shop, they can evacuate it for you, drive the car home, and continue with the diagnosis. We are evacuated out, we're in the negative, so we're under a vacuum. We'll let it sit for a little bit, continue to vacuum it out just a little more, just to be sure we got 100% of the system evacuated. After we know we have it 100%, we'll go back under and we'll pull out that regulator valve. If you want to get the regulator valve out for inspection, it's held on by just a little C-clip, little twisting, and it'll pop out. We already have the AC evacuated, so we should be good to go. You should wear goggles just in case there's any pressure still left in the system. There we go. Remember, the system was under a slight vacuum, so it wanted to suck it back in. Pull this out, and we'll inspect it. All right, so this is our culprit, the control valve. What we're looking for is contamination inside this filter screen. If things are too dirty, clogged up in these ports, if they are, then we want to replace the compressor as well. If it overall looks pretty good, it's not caked in anything, then we can just replace the valve itself. So there are a couple options at this point. A new valve from Volkswagen is a couple days out. Aftermarket valve is still a couple days out, but they do have compressors in stock. So it's up to you. Replace the compressor, you have AC today. Wait for a valve, you have AC tomorrow. The owner of this vehicle opted to go ahead, replace the compressor, so let's get rolling on that. From this point, pulling the compressor off is pretty simple. It's a 16 millimeter to get onto that belt tensioner. We'll go counterclockwise and then pull the belt off. We have two Torx holding on our hoses. They're a T45 with a long extension, one there and one on the other hose there. Once our lines are disconnected, it's really just 3 bolts from underneath. There's one here. Let me see if I can see. There's one in the back there, and then one down below right there. Just those 3 bolts. It comes off and down, and that's it. They are 13 millimeter. So the top bolt closest to the pulley, I can't get very good down here with my power tools. If you crack it loose, you can go up top and you have enough room to get it with your fingers from up top pretty easily. Hold on to it while we do this last one. Now there should be dowels holding it on, so we just wiggle it. There we go. And out it comes. Maybe. New compressor, line it up with the old one, make sure everything looks the same. Flip it over. And on the back side, the side towards the engine, there's 2 little dowels that go in here. They just look like this. Make sure that they get transferred over and don't fall out. Other than that, we'll pull off our little caps here, and then we'll be ready to install it. One thing to keep in mind is new compressors usually come with a bit of oil in them. Whether it's a full charge or not, depends on the manufacturer, but there usually is some bit of oil in there. So just be careful. I actually just took the bolts off, but I'm leaving the caps on, and I'll pull them off after it's in so I don't tip it upside down and get oil all over the place. So that top one next to the pulley I put in because I couldn't get it out until the compressor came out. So I put it in ahead of time. Up it goes. So it's a little challenging getting the thread started. on all of them, but you get it all in, and then you can tighten down this bottom one, this other top one over here, and you just kind of suck it in, and then that top one towards the pulley, that one we can get last. And then again, that's just, you get it mostly all the way in with your finger, and then we can tighten it down the rest of the way. The service manual does not give me torque specs on these 3 bolts, so just use your judgment. When you broke them loose, how did it feel? You can put them back roughly that tight. Before installing our lines back in the compressor, we just want to make sure the O-rings look good. We'll put a little compressor oil on them and then bolt them down. To get the bolt started, I like to just use a magnet, put it on the head, drop it in, try to twist it a few times, and then have it come off. I'll do that to the other one, and then we'll bolt them down. Before we put our belt back on, we want to turn the compressor pulley about 10 or so times. During the repair process, we may have tripped some codes, so we're going to go ahead and read DTCs just to see. So the activation AC compressor, that's that pressure regulator valve, and the refrigerant pressure lower limit exceeded. So we'll go ahead and clear those. Let me see, clear, yes. All right, we are cleared. We'll do a key cycle. So now what we want to do is make sure that the AC is off. We'll start the car and just let it run for about 5 minutes. Let me stop that. Last thing to do is recharge the system. If you don't have the equipment, again, just go back to the shop that evacuated it for you. They'll put your stuff back in. If you have the equipment, of course, there's always the sticker, 525 grams of R134. That's what we'll be putting in it. Test for functionality. Is it getting nice and cold now? Is it getting nice and cold every time? And AC is charged back up. We're running. Just to show you some data, we pulled this at the beginning. So now the compressor load is 10. So that's good. So this is known good. I still don't have the amps, which just kind of sucks, but you can still judge by the load, because before our load was really low. So now we have a good load. All right, so here's our temperature reading, nice and cold. So we are good and fixed. All right, there you go. That is the diagnosis and fix on this common Jetta problem. A few things to note: to do an in-depth diagnosis, you do need to evacuate the refrigerant. So if you don't have that, by all means go to a shop, get it evacuated, and then continue on with your diagnosis at home. With that said, to refill it, it's important that it's done by weight, not by pressure. So those at-home do-it-yourself bottles that have the little pressure gauge and you go by the pressure, that's inaccurate. So I encourage, if you're doing that with your vehicles, to just do it with caution, that the manufacturer suggests a certain weight. And when you go by pressure, you could be overweight, you could be a little underweight, you don't know. So best thing to do is just go back to the shop or have a professional evacuate it and fill it back up. Having a scope is also part of the diagnostic procedure. You can get cheap ones online. The one I used, I forget how much I got. It's from Amazon, not a sponsor, but you can find little 2-channel, 1-channel scopes like that, you know, for relatively cheap. I think that is it. It's blazing hot out in the 90s, and I'm in a car. So I'm ready to get out of this thing. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. See you on the next one.